The elevator doors slid shut on Richard's stunned face. I watched the indicator lights tick down, marking my descent from the top floor where I had spent 3 years of my life. I held a cardboard box of my belongings, the sole return for 1,000 days of 70-hour work weeks. My phone vibrated in my palm. The screen lit up with Daniel. I breathed slowly and answered. "Walter, where are you?" Daniel's voice boomed, crisp and energized. "We are all gathered in the lobby. The legal teams are setting up the tables. Today is the day we make history. Let us get this merger closed." "There is a change in plans, Daniel," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I am no longer with the company." A heavy silence stretched over the line. When Daniel spoke again, his excitement was gone, replaced by sharp disbelief. "What do you mean? Is this some last-minute negotiating tactic from Richard? If you are trying to squeeze another fraction of a percent out of the conversion, this is a dangerous game." "It is no tactic," I replied, watching the numbers on the elevator panel descend past the 10th floor. "I was terminated 15 minutes ago. Effective immediately." "Terminated?" Daniel repeated, his voice rising. "On signing day, that is absolute madness. Who would fire the chief negotiator on the morning of a $4 billion deal?" The elevator bell chimed as the carriage reached the ground floor. The doors slid open, revealing the polished marble expanse of the lobby. I walked out, holding my cardboard box. Across the lobby, I saw Daniel standing near the fountain. He was dressed in a charcoal suit, surrounded by his team of corporate advisors. He had his phone pressed to his ear, his free hands slicing through the air in frustration. Behind him, near the entrance, I saw Spencer standing with a smug smile. Spencer was Richard's 24-year-old son, who had been appointed as the Director of Human Resources Compliance just that morning. It was Spencer's first day on the job, and he had spent it looking for rules to enforce, no negotiation. "Daniel," I told him as I walked toward the doors, "it is just the reality of the situation. I suggest you talk to Richard and the board about how they want to proceed." I hung up and slipped the phone into my pocket. Daniel spotted me immediately. He ended his call and walked toward me with long, urgent strides. Behind him, his entire team stared at me in disbelief. "Walter," he said, wrapping his arm around my shoulder in greeting. "Tell me this is a joke. We are ready to sign the paperwork. The board is waiting." I shook my head, shifting the box in my arms. "I wish it were, Daniel, but Spencer just fired me. The merger is off." Daniel's face went pale, then flushed with anger. He turned on his heel and marched towards Spencer, who was still standing by the reception desk. I followed, not wanting to miss the look on the young man's face. "You did what?" Daniel demanded, his voice echoing off the high ceiling. Spencer's smug smile faltered as he looked at the hostile crowd of investment bankers and lawyers now surrounding him. He clutched a thick, blue employee handbook against his chest like a shield. "I was simply enforcing company policy," Spencer stammered. "Section 4, page 12 of the employee handbook clearly states that all executive staff must wear a traditional necktie." Walter arrived wearing a collarless band shirt. "It is a direct violation of our standards. I have to maintain discipline." Daniel's expression turned incredibly dark. "You fired the lead architect of a $4 billion merger because of a necktie?" At that moment, Richard, the chief executive officer, came rushing out of the elevator, his tie askew. Several board members trailed behind him. "Daniel, please," Richard gasped, reaching out a hand. "I am sure we can resolve this. Walter is a highly valued member of our leadership team. This is all just a misunderstanding." But Daniel did not look at Richard. He turned to his team, speaking in a low, cold tone. "If this is how they treat their best talent, we cannot trust them with our capital. There is no respect for competence here." I stood in silence, watching 3 years of my work, the long nights, and the endless stress evaporate in real time. Richard turned to me, his voice pleading. "Walter, please. Let us go upstairs and discuss this. Spencer is new to his role, and he was perhaps a bit too enthusiastic. We can easily reverse this decision and get the contract signed." "There is nothing to discuss, Richard," I said. "Your son made a decision. You stood by and let him do it." "I accept my termination." Daniel turned back to Richard, his jaw set. "Our agreement was with Walter. He is the only reason we brought our capital to the table. Without him, we are not comfortable moving forward." "You cannot just walk away," Richard protested. "The contracts are printed. The press release is scheduled. We have obligations. Actually, we can." Daniel said. Page 17, Section 4 of our letter of intent contains a key person clause. Walter is specifically named. If he leaves the organization prior to closing for any reason other than illness or death, we have the unilateral right to withdraw without penalty. Richard's face drained of color. He looked at his chief legal counsel, who slowly nodded. Walter insisted on that clause, the lawyer whispered. He is the only one who caught its significance during review. Daniel extended his hand to me. Walter, when you decide what is next for you, call me. Talent like yours is rare. With that, Daniel and his entire team turned and walked out of the glass doors, leaving a suffocating silence behind them. I nodded once to my former colleagues, then walked out too, leaving my old life behind. At home, the silence of my apartment felt heavy but welcome. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat out on the balcony. I watched the golden sunset paint the sky in deep shades of orange and red, colors I had not paid attention to in years. I tried to remember the last time I had actually been home before dark. I could not. For 3 years, my entire world had been defined by spreadsheets, late-night conference calls, and the cold, fluorescent lighting of the executive suite. That evening, my tablet began buzzing with notifications. The news alerts were stark. Apex Corporation's stock had plunged 28% on rumors that the Atlas Capital merger had collapsed. By the next morning, as I drank my coffee on the balcony, the stock fell another 12%. The company's value was evaporating, and thousands of jobs hung in the balance. The business I had spent 3 years trying to save was now in a complete freefall. A part of me felt a twinge of guilt. The junior analysts, the administrative staff, the IT department, those were good people who would suffer for the incompetence at the top. But a stronger, colder part of me recognized that I had not failed them. Their leadership had. Richard and his coddled son Spencer had brought this upon themselves. For the next week, I kept my phone turned off. I ignored calls and messages from former colleagues, corporate recruiters, and financial journalists. Everyone wanted to know what had happened in that lobby and what I planned to do next. I was not ready to give them any answers. Instead, I focused on myself. I slept for 8 hours a night. I walked to the local market and cooked actual meals instead of eating lukewarm takeout at my desk at midnight. I called my sister Martha, whom I had barely spoken to in 2 years. I have not heard you sound this relaxed in a decade, Martha said during our phone call. Getting fired might be the best thing that ever happened to you, Walter. You were killing yourself for that company. Maybe, I admitted, looking out at the park across the street, but I still cannot believe how it ended. 3 years of my life, Martha. 3 years of sacrificing my health, my personal life, and my peace of mind to save Apex Corporation from insolvency. And what did they sacrifice for you? She asked, her voice sharp with protective anger. Nothing. You gave them everything. And the moment Richard's son wanted to flex his new authority, they threw you out like trash. She was right. The board had sat in silence. Richard had watched his son fire me and said nothing until the investor walked away. They did not value my competence. They only valued the results of my labor. 2 weeks after my termination, my phone rang. I saw Richard's name on the screen. My first instinct was to decline the call and let it go to voicemail, but curiosity won. I swiped to answer. Walter, Richard said. He sounded completely defeated, his voice thin and exhausted. We need to talk. I am listening, Richard, I replied, keeping my tone polite but distant. The board wants to meet with you, he said, pausing as if trying to find the strength to continue. The situation here is, well, it is far worse than we anticipated. The bank is threatening to call in our lines of credit. We need your help. To do what exactly? I asked. To save the company, Walter. To bring Daniel back to the negotiation table. You are the only one who can fix this. I let out a soft laugh. The same company that terminated my contract on signing day because I did not wear a necktie. Richard's sigh was long and heavy with regret. That was a terrible mistake. Spencer has been removed from his position in human resources and sent to a junior research role where he cannot do any damage. The board has formally reprimanded me for failing to control the situation. I said nothing, letting the silence stretch between us. The silence was my leverage. Please, Walter, Richard pleaded. Thousands of people will lose their livelihoods if we file for bankruptcy. People who worked alongside you, who respect you. I thought about the board members who had sat silently in that boardroom while I was humiliated. They had not cared about my respect or my livelihood. They had only cared about their own comfort. But I did not say that to Richard. "What is the board's offer?" I asked instead. "Come to the boardroom tomorrow," Richard said, a note of hope creeping into his voice. "Name your terms. We are prepared to make this right." I stared at the wall, calculating my moves. I did not want to wait until tomorrow. I wanted them to feel the pressure build. "I will meet with the board today, not tomorrow," I said. "I will be there at 2 o'clock this afternoon, and I will bring my conditions." I hung up before he could argue. I went to my closet, bypassed my formal suits, and pulled out the exact same collarless band shirt I had been wearing when Spencer fired me. If they wanted me back, they would have to accept me on my own terms. Starting with how I dressed, at 2 o'clock, I walked into the boardroom without knocking. I was wearing the exact same collarless band shirt I wore when Spencer terminated me. The visual message was clear, and from the immediate wincing around the table, it was received. The board members rose, their faces showing desperate hope and embarrassment. Richard sat at the center, looking as though he had not slept in 2 weeks. Spencer was absent. "Thank you for coming, Walter," the chairman said, offering a tight, anxious smile. "Let us skip the pleasantries," I said, taking a seat and placing my briefcase on the table. "In the 2 weeks since I left, our stock has fallen 62%. 3 major clients are reviewing their contracts, and the press is speculating on our bankruptcy." Grim nods followed. "You lost the Atlas Capital merger, which was your last chance at survival," I continued. "Even if I can convince Daniel to return, the terms will be far worse now." "We understand that, Walter," Richard said, voice cracking slightly. "But we have to try something. The board is ready to do whatever it takes." "Why should I help you?" I asked, looking at each of them in turn. I met every eye around the table. "None of you spoke up when Spencer fired me on a whim in the lobby. You sat in silence and let a 24-year-old on his first day destroy 3 years of my work. We made a catastrophic error," the chairman admitted, his voice quiet. "What would it take for you to return to the company?" I opened my briefcase and withdrew a stapled document. I slid it across the table. "These terms are entirely non-negotiable." The chairman adjusted his glasses and flipped the document open. Beside him, Richard leaned in to read. I watched as the color slowly drained from Richard's face. "This is quite extensive," Richard whispered. "It is," I agreed. "It includes my immediate reinstatement as Chief Strategy Officer, a tripling of my previous base salary, a permanent seat on the board of directors, and complete autonomy over our corporate strategy. Furthermore, it details a substantial equity stake in the company and a requirement for a public, written statement acknowledging the error in my termination." The chairman pointed to the second page. "This clause regarding new business ventures is highly unusual, Walter. It states that any new venture you develop remains 60% your personal property, and you retain controlling interest." "Why would we agree to that?" "Because it is my insurance policy against future incompetence," I replied. "So is firing your chief negotiator over a necktie on the signing day of a $4 billion merger." "This is extortion," a board member objected. "We cannot sign away controlling interest in future assets. The board has a duty to protect the company." "Let us talk about your duty," I said. "Under corporate law, you owe a fiduciary duty of care to shareholders. Allowing Spencer to fire the lead negotiator of a $4 billion merger on signing day is a clear breach of that duty, constituting gross negligence." The room went dead silent. Several board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "By remaining silent, you failed in your duty. You allowed family relationships to override the interests of the corporation. Daniel is preparing a shareholder derivative lawsuit against this board, personally for breach of fiduciary duty. The business judgment rule will not protect you from personal liability for the lost shareholder value." The threat of personal financial ruin hung in the air like a heavy fog. If the shareholders sued them personally, their estates, their homes, and their personal bank accounts would be at risk. The chairman looked at the chief legal counsel, who sat in the corner of the room. The counsel slowly nodded his head, his face grim. "Walter is correct," the lawyer said. "If a court finds gross negligence, your director liability insurance may not cover the damages. The chairman stared at the contract for a long moment. He picked up his pen. "If we sign this, you will bring Daniel back?" he asked. "I will call him," I said. "I cannot guarantee his response, but I will make the attempt." The chairman signed his name at the bottom of the page. He passed the document to the other board members. One by one, they signed in silence. Richard was the last, his pen hovering for a long, painful moment before he added his signature. The chairman said, pushing the signed document back to me. "When do you start?" "I already have," I said, rising from my seat and closing my briefcase. "I will be in my office making calls. I suggest you prepare for a very difficult month." That evening, I called Daniel. The conversation lasted for over 2 hours. He was extremely reluctant to re-engage with Apex Corporation. "Their leadership showed their true colors, Walter," Daniel said. "They are unprofessional and disorganized. Why should I trust them with my capital?" "You are not trusting them," I told him. "You are trusting me. Under my new contract, I have a seat on the board and absolute control over corporate strategy. I can guarantee that Spencer will never be allowed near this deal again." Daniel sighed. "Only for you, Walter. But we are renegotiating the valuation. The price is going down. I knew it would. It was the price the company had to pay for its own stupidity." Over the next few months, I worked relentlessly to stabilize the ship. The merger with Atlas Capital finally closed, though at a lower valuation than the original $4 billion. It was a painful concession for Richard and the board, but it kept the company from going under. Spencer was nowhere to be seen during the final negotiations. He had been quietly moved to a low-level research assistant position in the basement archives, where his title was meaningless and his authority was non-existent. I occasionally saw Spencer in the hallways. He always looked away quickly, his face flushing with embarrassment. I never spoke to him or mentioned his name in board meetings. His presence did not concern me anymore. However, I had not forgotten why I had returned. The unique clause in my contract, which gave me majority ownership of any new business initiative I developed, was not a random demand. I had a very specific plan, and it began with a conversation with Clara, our head of product development. "I need to start a side project, Clara," I told her over lunch one afternoon in our cafeteria. "Something's small, experimental, and outside our usual software analytics scope. Can you assemble a small team for me?" Clara looked surprised, her fork hovering in the air. "A side project? Walter, we are a software firm. What kind of project do you have in mind?" "I have been thinking about professional clothing, specifically corporate menswear," I explained. "It is an industry ripe for change. Traditional dress codes are rigid, and yet the modern workplace is shifting between formal and casual. My contract allows me to explore new verticals using company resources, provided I compensate the firm for their time." Clara, who had worked under my leadership for years and trusted my instincts implicitly, agreed without hesitation. By the end of the week, she had assembled a small, dedicated team of 5 designers and product engineers. We began meeting in a spare conference room during evenings and weekends. We conducted extensive market research, analyzing the pain points of male professionals who felt restricted by traditional, archaic dress codes. I was particularly interested in modular designs, dress shirts that could transition from a relaxed band collar to a formal button-down with a simple, hidden attachment system. We also designed blazers with convertible lapels and jackets with discreet zip-out linings that could instantly shift a look from casual to board meeting formal. Why not just buy separate shirts for different occasions? One of the young designers asked during a brainstorming session. "Because the corporate world is unpredictable," I told him. "A man should not have to buy 2 entirely different wardrobes or carry a change of clothes in his briefcase just because some executive decides to enforce a dress code rule. We want to give professionals the power of flexibility." The team embraced the challenge. They saw it as a creative outlet, a welcome escape from their daily routine of software analytics. We partnered with a small textile manufacturer in North Carolina to produce a limited run of our prototypes. I paid for the manufacturing costs out of my personal funds, ensuring that every hour the company team spent on the project was documented and billed to my personal account. I wanted our records to be absolutely spotless. I knew Richard and the board would look for any excuse to claim the venture if it succeeded. I began wearing our prototypes to the office. I started with simple pieces, a navy blazer with a hidden collar system, and button-down shirts that felt as comfortable as casual wear but looked perfectly tailored. No one commented on my clothing directly, but I noticed the younger analysts watching me in the hallways. Then came our signature product, the adaptations shirt. It looked like a premium crisp dress shirt, but the collar was fully adjustable and could be worn without a tie or converted into a sleek band collar in seconds. Women and men in the office began asking where I bought my clothes. Instead of giving them a direct answer, I invited them to informal focus groups. I collected their feedback on their own workplace clothing struggles. The rules here are ridiculous, one senior analyst told me during a session. If I forget a necktie, I get a warning from HR. But the executives wear whatever they want. It is about control, not professionalism. The feedback confirmed my research. We had identified a massive gap in the market. 6 months after my return, our small clothing line, which I had officially named Adaptations, was ready for a limited commercial launch. We had built a clean, minimalist website, secured a reliable manufacturing partner, and developed a marketing campaign centered on the concept of workplace freedom. The day before our official website launch, I called an all-hands meeting. Everyone in the company attended, curious about the unusual summons. As I walked to the front of the auditorium, I scanned the crowd. I spotted Spencer sitting in the very back row, slumped in his chair, trying to blend into the shadow of the exit sign. I smiled to myself, adjusted the collar of my adaptation shirt, and began the presentation. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice echoing in the quiet auditorium. "Today marks an important milestone. We have stabilized our core business and completed the merger with Atlas Capital. Now, we are ready to announce a new direction." Richard looked confused from his seat in the front row. This presentation was not on the official agenda. For the past 6 months, a small team has been developing a project that represents our future, I continued, clicking the remote to show the first slide. A simple, elegant logo appeared on the screen. Adaptations. I am proud to introduce a line of professional wear designed to adapt to the changing environments of the modern workplace, I said. These are not just clothes. They are solutions. I walked toward the center of the stage, smoothing the lapels of my blazer. Take the shirt I am wearing. To you, it looks like a standard dress shirt, but it features an ingenious, hidden adjustment system. With a few simple movements, the collar can transition from a relaxed band style to a formal button-down, maintaining a tailored appearance. No more buying multiple wardrobes for different offices, and no more worrying about arbitrary rules. I demonstrated the transition, and a soft murmur swept through the room. Several board members exchanged wide-eyed glances. In the back, Spencer stared at the screen, his face turning pale as recognition set in. "Every piece in this collection will include a story tag," I said, pausing to let my eyes meet Spencer's in the back. "The tag will explain the inspiration behind the brand. It is the story of how an arbitrary judgment regarding a necktie nearly destroyed a corporate merger and wiped out billions of dollars in shareholder value." The room went completely silent. No one looked back at Spencer, but everyone knew exactly whom I meant. That incident showed us that when superficial judgments override professional competence, everyone loses, I said. Adaptations offers a practical solution. I advanced to the final slide, displaying the commercial website launch date. Under my contract, which the board approved 6 months ago, Adaptations will operate as a separate entity. I retain 60% ownership and controlling interest, while this company receives a 40% equity stake. Every resource used has been fully compensated. Richard stood up, his face red. "Walter, this is the first I am hearing of a launch. The board should discuss the timing of this announcement." "The board already approved my contract, which grants me complete autonomy over this venture," I replied smoothly. "The timing is not negotiable, but I welcome your support." I thanked the audience and walked off the stage. The launch exceeded our wildest projections. The media seized on the origin story. One prominent business journal ran a headline about the executive who turned a dress code firing into a multi-million-dollar clothing empire. Orders flooded in immediately. 2 weeks later, our website crashed from traffic when Daniel gave an interview to a major financial news network. He was wearing one of our modular shirts. I wear their designs now, Daniel told the reporter. It is the best tailored professional wear I have owned, and I am proud to support an enterprise that values substance over appearance. The interview went viral. Our orders tripled overnight. Richard called me to his office the next day, gesturing to the sales reports on his screen. "This is far larger than we anticipated, Walter," he said. "But the board is concerned. The story behind the brand is making us look bad. It is damaging Spencer's future. The story is entirely factual." I replied. "Sometimes the truth hurts, Richard," I said. "When Spencer terminated me, he believed there would be no consequences. You sat in silence, believing the same. The board did nothing because they assumed the hierarchy would protect them. I want actions to have consequences. Adaptations is about taking a moment of humiliation and transforming it into value." He had no response. 1 year after my firing, Adaptations became an independent corporation. The company's 40% stake was now its most valuable asset, generating more profit than our core software business. The merger with Atlas Capital had stabilized our operations, but I was now the largest individual shareholder. At the annual meeting, I announced the creation of the Adaptations Foundation. It would provide grants and mentorship to professionals who had faced discrimination or arbitrary termination in the corporate world. The foundation will also feature a unique fellowship program. I told the audience. It is designed for individuals who have made significant professional mistakes but have shown genuine growth. The applications are open. I looked at Spencer. He was no longer hiding in the back. He sat in the middle rows, looking humbled but focused. After the meeting, Spencer approached me. It was the first time we had spoken in a year. "The fellowship program," he said quietly. "Am I eligible to apply?" "The application is open to everyone, Spencer," I said. "The committee will review your self-assessment and growth plan. There will be no special treatment." "I understand," he said. "I want to be more than my worst mistake." I handed him my card. 2 months later, the committee selected Spencer as an alternate fellow. He sent me a brief message. "Thank you for the chance to grow." I did not reply, but I saved the message. The revenge was not in Spencer's loss of status or the company's struggle. It was in the transformation of a moment meant to shame me into a movement that empowered others. Sometimes, the most powerful response to someone who tries to make you small is to grow so large they have no choice but to stand in your shadow.